Hello, namaste and welcome. Welcome to this podcast जिसका नाम है आर्ट्स एंड लाइफ विद शुभा। हाँ, आप सोच रहे होंगे नाम बदल गया है। यस, नाम थोड़ा बदल गया है। वी वर कॉलिंग इट नर्चरिंग arts and creativity in education with Shubha earlier. And good news is आपके सहयोग से बहुत सारे लोगों के सहयोग से we have completed 1 year of this podcast जिसमें हम कला की बात कर रहे थे, शिक्षा में कला की बात कर रहे थे और रचनात्मकता की बात कर रहे थे, उसे नर्चर करने की बात कर रहे थे, उसको दाचने की बात कर रहे थे। और फिर इस 1 साल के अनुभव से लगा कि हम हमारे जो मेहमान हैं उनको हम वहीं तक सीमित नहीं रखें जिन्होंने स्कूल के लिए काम किया है, स्कूल के अंदर काम किया है, दे आर वर्किंग फॉर चिल्ड्रन स्कूल और एजुकेशन, बट आवर गेस्ट्स कैन बी from anywhere and from any field, but they have a deep understanding of arts, or they are working in arts in their own way, and they know what does arts mean in our life. So we thought, why not keep the title arts and life with Shubha. Um, and we are not deviating, we are not going away from our concern how arts can be in the center of a school curriculum. That will be part of it also. So, but we have widened our scope, we have widened our field of conversation, discussions, or insights coming from our guests. तो जैसा कि आप जानते हैं कि हमारे जो ये पॉडकास्ट में है उसमें तरह तरह के जो मेहमान आते हैं वो किसी न किसी आर्ट से उसका संबंध होता है एंड व्हेन वी से आर्ट्स वी मीन ऑल आर्ट्स, परफॉर्मिंग आर्ट्स, विजुअल आर्ट्स, लिटरेरी आर्ट्स, तो वो किसी भी आर्ट से हो सकते हैं। और हम उनसे बात करते हैं, आपसे मिलवाते हैं और एक अच्छी बात ये है कि आप भी उनसे सवाल कर सकते हैं। डू आस्क इफ यू हैव एनीथिंग टू आस्क to the guest of today also. And before I move ahead, before I invite today's guest, let me tell you something about her. Right. So give me a second. I am going to tell you something about her. So here we go. Oh, yeah. Just a second. Goof up. Yeah. Just a second. Yeah. Ready to go. Here I go. This was the name of this podcast earlier, Nurturing Arts and Creativity in Education with Shuba. Right? इस बीच जो लोग आ गए मैं उनका स्वागत भी कर देना चाहता हूँ, फिर बीच में इधर नजर पड़े न पड़े पर आपके सवाल देखने के लिए जरूर इधर आऊंगा। बिंदु कौल जी, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। अशोक कल्याण जी, प्रमोद पैनली, जो लिख रहे हैं उनका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, जो सुन रहे हैं देख रहे हैं उनका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। लेकिन सबसे बड़ा धन्यवाद मैं देना चाहूंगा उन तमाम मेहमानों को, उन सारे गेस्ट को जो इस पॉडकास्ट में पिछले 1 साल में आए। उनका तहे दिल से शुक्रिया, उनका दिल से आभार है, क्योंकि उन्होंने दे हैड ट्रस्ट ऑन मी, दे बिलीव्ड इन मी, दे सपोर्टेड द आइडिया ऑफ दिस पॉडकास्ट एंड दिस प्लेटफॉर्म where different practitioners with different experience are coming here and sharing their work, and we are learning a lot from them. So thank you each guest who was there during the whole year. And now we have changed a little. We will be doing all what we were doing, but we will doing a little more than that. So now the podcast title is Arts and Life with Shubha, Exploring Creativity and Human Connections. And today's guest is Sanjna Kapoor. Uh, Before I call her, let me tell you something about her. She is the founder of Artful Teacher Workshop Program. Sanjana Kapoor is well known for her passionate work with theatre over 2 decades and for having built Prithvi Theatre. All of us know, especially the people in theatre, all of us know Prithvi Theatre, and for having built Prithvi Theatre into one of India's premier cultural hubs, 1990 to 2011. She is responsible for having brought to Indian audiences some of the finest world and Indian theatre, being the first to introduce a touring theatre festival into the Indian scene. She has also played a key role as catalyst for the theatre for children. Her vision, commitment, and enthusiasm ensure that she keeps bringing the richness of theatre into people's lives in multiple ways. She co-founded Junoon 2012 to 2020 and spearheaded Junoon's school program and continued the legacy of both the Kapoors and the Candles to take theatre to people across the country. The role of theatre in schools holds a special place in her heart and always said that if she was not working in the field of theatre, she would work in the field of education. She has developed the Artful Teacher Workshop program and conducts these workshops in schools across the country. So, this was about today's guest, Sanjana Kapoor. And now I request her to please come in front of our audiences. Welcome, Sanjana. Welcome.
Hello, Shuba. How are you?
Yeah, good, good, good. And how are you?
Very well indeed.
Good, Sanjana. Arts. I have been seeing you in many platforms of arts and doing something. And they say art is everywhere. Art is in daily life. Can you just share what was your encounter or interaction with arts today? How was it?
Today, is it?
Today. Today, yes. Uh, आर्ट से कहाँ किस तरह मिलना हुआ टुडे
For me personally or
yes
generally?
yes yes for Sanjana today, yeah, that can be your part also if something somewhere something happens that
Well, you can see.
you may include in your
I mean, you can see it's everywhere. I mean, I think we're really lucky that we live in India, which is so rich. I mean, really, you just travel 20 kilometers and there's new colors and new smells and new sounds and new languages. So there's just such a variety here, rather than sort of maybe compared to Scandinavian countries or countries in the West, which are much, not all, but some are much blander or
yeah
more uniform. So I think art is, it's really part of our lives. The point is for us to make it a conscious part of our lives, because I think that's what we need today. We need to hold on to the consciousness of the fact that we need the arts. We have to go out and actually pull them into our lives, because there was a time when they were part of everybody's lives in a very normal, natural way. But that's eroded, I think, during, whatever, industrial revolution, world wars, all these influences that aimed at also the economics, aimed at making our life easier and more efficient. And I think art needs time and a little bit of leisure and a little bit of reflection. And if you're in a harbada, then you can get lost into a world without art.
yeah you have taken a tour of the world, it seems. But again, coming back to your house, your street, your town, your city, what was the art moment of the day today?
The artful moment of the day today for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Can you remember? I mean, it's a just a sudden
well,
question, but
I mean, I think my moment, my closest and most exciting moments are my Amazon moments. I must say this, it's terrible, but I'm an Amazon Yeah, I use Amazon. But so my precious books arrive, and I get new books, and
Ah,
so for
yes.
me that was a delight. I got a new children's book that came to me, with beautiful,
Great.
silly poems about science, but so beautifully written and illustrated, and it delighted me. So I read them to my son, who is 22 and in England. So yeah, that was my high point of my artful engagement today.
Wow, that's beautiful. And we will talk about books a little later because it's very important to talk about books, as you mentioned, because sometimes we are mistaken that arts has to do only with experience and books kinare mein rakho, but then we will come to that later. But tell me, Sanjana, what how have you landed where you are today? You are known for your work in arts, and a few years back, you were engaged totally with Junoon. So I think first we should start with why not start with your interest in children's theater, which you introduced, which was a part of Prithvi Theater activity. From somewhere from there to there, how did it happen? Yeah, it's a long
Well,
question, but then we are
I know.
curious
I
to
think
know
I
that.
yeah, but I think when a lot of times when we're struggling to find work in theater, or youngsters, then the easiest thing is that somebody says, "Oh, come and help us with our school play or do this." So you gravitate sort of naturally. Maybe if you're curious about children and you like them, and I do, then you do naturally gravitate towards children. But then I started really enjoying working with children. I was.
Mm,
At one point again, by chance, met the principal of a blind school, and she cornered me literally and forced me to work with her children.
okay.
And I said, no, I've never worked with a blind, I've never met a blind person in my life. How can I work with blind children? And she was so confident that I would fall in love with them, which I did instantly. So she really literally locked me in the room with 40 blind children, and they were wonderful. So I worked there for 13 years, off and on, just to come and do their annual play. And that was just an incredible experience. I learned on the job. I was very raw and new. But I was doing theater with children. When I started working at Prithvi, I came in with just one or two projects that I wanted to do. But the first year, when I didn't do any projects, I just watched every play at Prithvi just to observe and understand. And it was going through a bit of a hard patch. It was going through a downer. The audiences were bad. And I say bad, I don't usually like using that word for audiences, but they were bad in that they were disrespectful to the space, to the theater. There were panthuks on the walls. Uh, the theater was bad. And I mean, I have no qualms with calling theater bad. And the theater was really bad. The performances were terrible. I think what had happened was that it took many years for Prithvi, when it started, for Prithvi Theatre to generate an audience. And once the audience started coming in, then the Catch 22 happened, and producers started producing plays to be successful, to be entertaining, to be commercially viable. And then their quality just went down the drain. Whereas the best plays at Prithvi, I think, that I've ever seen were with 20 people on stage and four people in the audience, and they were still fantastic performances. But that doesn't exist anymore. When I started working there, I said we have to educate our younger generation. The children have to be educated about how to love and respect the place, and love and respect theater enough to even take their shoes off and throw them at bad actors. I have no problem with that. But so that's when we started Summertime at Prithvi workshops. And that was every year, annual workshops. Aim was clearly to pull in an audience of children who would fall in love and nurture theater and respect it. But
Mm,
I always also knew that the arts will create a life-changing experience for children themselves. So that was my double-edged objective, and that I managed to do for 21 years, and it was a beautiful experience. All the conductors of those workshops, and there were many, slowly more and more, the tribe of conductors grew. They were all professionals in their field. They were not professional conductors or trainers. So they were either professional actors, directors, writers, puppeteers, artists in their field. And they also had the ability to work with children. And that's what we would grab them and get them to work with children. It was fun.
Before we move on to the Junoon project, I'm calling it project. You will tell us what it was really. Um, I'm interested to know about a little about Shakespeareana. If I am pronouncing it right, Shakespeareana. Yes. So, do you have any memories of it, or did you hear what was happening? What were they doing? Just share about Shakespearean, and for
Well,
our
I
audience,
mean,
just share what is
he's
Shakespearean.
this is
Ah,
my grandfather, my
oh,
grandmother. And so
I
this is
see.
his book, but this is the story of their life. And their story is
Yeah.
Shakespearean, with Shakespeareana is their theater company. But there was a film made called Shakespeare Wala, so he used that. But I mean, he is my hero.
Oh, okay,
So
that Shakespeare Wala film was based on this
their story.
Shakespearean thing.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
So he was my absolute hero, and I knew him very well. And he directed me in a play also. I acted with him. My grandfather, he was 84, and he came to Bombay and directed Gaslight, one of Prithvi's first productions. We produced it. So yeah, it was. I grew up listening to their stories. I didn't grow up listening to fairy tales. So when I had my own son, I had to actually read traditional fairy tales to understand them because I didn't know. I never knew them. So even whatever, Jack and the Beanstalk and Cinderella and the Pea, Princess and the Pea. I don't know these sort of typical Western stories because I grew up listening to their stories of either stories of Shakespeare. When I would go to sleep, I would ask my mom, tell me a Shakespeare story, or stories of their travels across India. They traveled for about 30 years across India with their theater company. So there's
30
an entire
years.
generation of English speaking people in India from a particular generation who had Shakespeareana come to their school every year. And they grew up
Hmm.
6 years, 8 years of their school life. They got exposed to Shakespeare, Noel Coward, Bernard Shaw, modern classics of that kind. I mean, incredible work. It changed their
Hmm.
lives.
Great. Very interesting. And now let's come to Junoon. So, what was Junoon about? I'm sure it has nothing to do with the film Junoon.
Only the meaning
uh,
of the word. No, nothing to do with the film.
yeah. So, what was this? Because as far as I know, this was a project related to arts in
Yeah.
schools. Yeah.
No, no,
So,
not only
how?
schools, not only schools. It was a lot.
Not
It
only in
was a
schools.
yeah,
Tell
yeah.
us
It was.
about it. Yeah,
I
please.
think also with Prithvi, I was becoming. I mean, I just believe that also when I started working at Prithvi, just to give you a background, I managed Prithvi for many years and the festivals, but also the theater, and it was always a struggle and a very lonely job. I
Uh,
felt isolated, which is why one then started pulling people together, and from that, many things happened and many things died. Nothing had a life forever. But I
yeah.
realized that theater also doesn't work in isolation. Theater actually is part of life, and we were talking about this also. It's part of every day, and therefore in the little home of Prithvi Theatre, we needed all the arts to come in and to speak to one another. So there was a little Vikalp has documentary film shows happening once a month. There's poetry happening. There's different things that happen every month. There was an art gallery that I ran. The idea was that people meet and talk. But I'm not sure how successful that really was. I don't think theatre walas, I think they're a bit lazy in Bombay. So I don't think that worked very well, but it was still interesting. But from there, the idea of Junoon came that, one needs to be able to take the conversation about the arts across to various audiences and across. So we did satellite programs across the city. We had conversations with artists. We had performances. We had the school program, which was also a major part of the program. A major
Hmm.
part of Junoon was a school program where we offered schools across India. I mean, yeah, we went all over the country. I don't know if you can see. These are the kind of places we went to all over the country.
Okay.
we took theater regularly. So this was to get children to be exposed to the arts. So they met artists, they met puppeteers, they met dancers, they met musicians, and they saw theater. And they also had an opportunity to create something themselves. So it was very, there were different packages that we offered. The big one was 5 days, and we worked with 500 children. It was madness. It was wonderful, but it was a lot of energy and a lot of fun. And the big takeaway, I think, for teachers was they never knew how capable their students were to be so creative in such little time with such few resources. And it's astonishing how children, you know this, how children can create if we just give them a platform and ignite them.
Yeah, I did not know this thing about this June program. I mean, generally people do theater, either it is participatory or maybe interactive. But introducing all the departments, you are talking about music, you are talking about puppets and all, and what goes behind that, and through that medium, introducing the different arts, very interesting. So, why did you stop? And when you say we, who were those we?
Well, there was Samira Iyengar and I co-founded Junoon, and we'd been working together for 10 years at Prithvi. But all the we's are these wonderful artists that we've been working for so many years. And I mean, we are nothing without them. They're the pillar of everything we do. So yeah, I mean, that still is what I love doing the most. I love working collaboratively with people and to make and create things with people. So there was a host of people who would come in and work with us, freelance or come on for a project.
So, June worked till 2020. Was
Mhm.
it pandemics or something else? June
Well,
did
I think it
not
was it
continue.
was a beautiful mix of both. I think we were really lucky that the pandemic was the it was in the air. It hadn't lockdown hadn't started yet, but
Uh-huh.
it was something serious happening. But that was not the real reason. We knew
Okay.
that I mean the real reason really was that it was just very, very difficult for us to continue to sustain ourselves financially. It was very tough. It was an ambitious program. We wanted to give ourselves salaries. We wanted to pay everybody. We wanted to make it a professional engagement. And being in Bombay, it's more expensive. So it was tough. I think we had a good innings. Out of the 8 years, I think I paid myself a salary for 4 years, which is not bad. But other than that, one couldn't. But I mean, I think that's only my salary. Everybody else got their salary. I think that it ended at a really good time because I know my nature that I would have been like a bull pulling it through COVID, killing myself, really banging myself against head against the wall, and it would have ruined me. And I'm glad that it ended when it did. So it was a blessing in disguise, and it gave me an amazing opportunity to just empty myself during COVID and really just realign my settings, which happened, luckily.
When you just spoke about salaries, finances, and so on, that makes me think about these uh, these main arts, mainstream arts like theater, dance, music. We promote children. We ask them, okay, you should take part. It's very good for them. But we have not yet established them as a career. Uh, I think that like हम चाहते भी हैं कि आर्ट्स होना चाहिए और हमारे पास कोई क्लियर रास्ता नहीं है सो करियर क्या है इसमें लाइक हाउ शुड वी डील विद दिस व्हाट डू यू थिंक
Well, firstly, I'll just go back a little bit. Is that in that all the workshops I've ever done in my life, myself, and also even when I've done a production-oriented workshop, very rarely, but a few, But otherwise, even when we've organized them at Prithvi for other people, all our workshops have been process-based workshops. The process has been critical, not the end. So there've not been a production at the end. There's not been a big tam jam at the end, because that, I think, is a disaster. I think that's not what, I think that's fine if you're working with the same group of children for a year. That's fine. But if you're working with them for 10 days or 1 month, I think it's a really not a good idea, because it makes that the focus. I think it's always nice for children to have some showcase. They like showing off. So somewhere where they can actually perform, of course, in front of their parents or friends or whatever. But it shouldn't be like a production, I think personally, because then they lose out on all the learning that can happen in their being and in their life through the process, because it's too result oriented. Having said that, the so my our aim, even when we would speak to parents who would bring their children to Prithvi on the first day, we would tell them that this is not to make professional theotowalas out of your children. Huh? They must go out and get a real job, because this is a struggle, but it is to make an audience out of them. And they must be an audience. They must come back. So we always gave them a membership card. They could come and see plays free. I would curate a whole series of plays through the year for children. They would come and see plays free, and they would come and see the same play again and again and again and again and again. And that was the idea. Um, but when it comes to, and I'm asked sometimes to come and talk at places, and I always refuse to talk about theater being an option for a career option. Come and speak in our school about theater being an art, or the arts. The arts is a different thing, but theater, and I would say, but it's not in our country. And I say this with deep sadness, and I say this with deep hope. And I also know that in some parts of the country, of course, it is. Marathi theatre is very professional and commercial. In South India, Yakshagana is booked for 30 years. I mean, in Assam, mobile theater actors earn in lakhs and lakhs and lakhs. I mean, they do that so that they can come back and do their other theater. It's different. Like in Bombay, you used to do TV serials, so you could do theater in Assam. So there are different practices across the country. We're such a huge and diverse country, but in basically Hindi and English, to make a profession of theater, it doesn't exist. So you either have to be completely crazy or very stupid or a bit of both. And you definitely have to be an entrepreneur. You have to create your own opportunities. You can't sit back and think it's all going to happen, because there is no infrastructure out there. So there is, I mean, you look around, I mean, if people are coming out of MBAs and there's business to give them jobs, or they're coming out as engineers and from engineering colleges and there's engineering jobs, fewer and fewer, but there are. How many drama schools do we have in this country? How many drama universities or colleges do we have in this country? Not even a handful. So where are we taking this seriously? Where are we actually saying we are going to set up the infrastructure? You go to any East Bloc country. I was in Serbia, and every neighborhood has a oh, you got a power cut. How lovely you look.
Yeah, you can continue.
So in Serbia, every neighborhood has a theater for children, a puppet theater, a little theater for children to come and watch theater. There's a little museum for children. I mean, children are really regarded as a very, very important part of society that needs nurturing. Now, where do we do that here? We don't have it. So, I mean, that's children, but I mean, even adults don't have it. So, but having said that, I think in the last 15, 18 years in India, metropolitan India, there is a younger generation of theatrewalas that are taking themselves more seriously and that are wanting to make it a professional and are managing. But I say this with sadness, because I still know some of the greatest talented actors and performers I know are still having to go, and they won't like me saying this because they think it's a great thing. They're still having to go and do workshops in corporate houses for a living. And I believe those workshops are soul destroying. They don't believe that. They think they're great. But I think they take you off track. They take you away from what you want to be and where you want to go, and they distract you. And you will find after 10 years, 20 years, you've wasted a lot of time where you should have been honing. All you have as an actor and as a theatre wala is this. This is your instrument. You have to fill it up with, you have to nurture it, not only with food and good health, but good ideas and inspirations and thoughts. And you need time for that. So it's a catch 22, but it's a struggle.
Not many things hidden and crucial and to understand more actually. So you talked about schools and you talked about that work which we call the process, not focusing on production. Though the schools are generally they just want to see productions and they generally do not bother that each and every one should be part of that process. They don't mind if you select a few and do something and they are happy about it. um, is there uh, mm, is there a contradiction when we say process? And through process, we are working on certain areas. Maybe when we work with children, we open them up. We are working on their communication skills or creativity, collaborative skills. And then why does it not work with, hmm, okay, excess power? Why does it not work the same way with the necessary tweaks with the corporate people? I just want to understand this because you are working for just थोड़े समय के लिए गए ये करना है और निकल आए. You are not working for long. So what do you mean by that? The soul is not there when you said this. What did you mean actually? I want to understand that.
Okay, two things. One is I've very so I don't my work is not focused on working with school children to do drama. That's not my work. My
Yeah.
work is focused on exposure to children, giving them exposure to the
Mm.
finest, most fantastic performing arts of our country. So a little bit like what Spick McKay started out doing with music and dance performances across India, but I think we just do it slightly differently, and we believe that there really has to be much more of a dialogue that we also are very clear that when we work with our artists, they don't speak down at children. So we do a lot of work with the artists. We don't think that the artists all know how to deal with children. They don't. So we
Yeah.
actually work with them about how to share their world and their passion and their art with children in a way in which children can get inspired, right? So that's what we do. So it's not a problem for us with schools. We don't do productions, so we don't do workshops with schools. That's not what I've done personally, very rarely, and that's a different thing. But when it comes to, I've done workshops with corporates also, at some point, very few, at some point in our Junoon life, because we needed to earn money for Junoon. And I say it's soul destroying because um, it's just like I've done advertising as well. When you model for something, yeah, it's good money. It's just a day, but that day is such a useless, wasteful day. And everybody's priorities are so different from my own. And why am I
Mm.
putting myself through actually quite a torturous experience? So I know that when I've done corporate workshops, of course you can be lucky, and of course it needn't be. But when I've done corporate workshops, I know that their respect for theater is not really there. So they don't really know what theater's all about. They don't really know what I'm all about as a theater person. But I have to put on another act, which is like being an actor, right? But I'd rather be an actor on stage. Why shouldn't with some beautiful text written by some wonderful genius writer, rather than have to fake it with trying to impart some experience. Of course, everybody can learn from the most amazing transformational theater workshop experiences. Of course, there's huge power there. There's a lot of gain necessarily there, but I think we have to be very careful. We must not fool ourselves. We must be very aware that, yes, I'm doing this. My father did this all his life. He acted in horrible commercial indie films. And I remember asking my mother, how could he do it? These films I cannot watch. There's women getting raped, and there's fight scenes and violence, and there's the most horrible stuff happening, and third-rate acting. By the time I came around, I think his better films were over. I came in during the worst time when he was doing crap films in the 80s and 70, whatever, 70s, 80s. And my mother said that it's never started like that. It started out with really good cinema. And then it became commercial cinema, which time your lifestyle had become comfortable. So your lifestyle, you had to keep working to keep this lifestyle going. But he did something extraordinary. He believed that you had to give back. And not many people have done that. He built Prithvi Theatre and he produced films that he believed in. And but it still was soul destroying for him to do that work. He did let go of some part of himself. He never went back on stage. He built Prithvi Theatre. My mother never acted there. He never acted there. That's crazy. My grandparents did. I did. My brother did. But it's a shame. So I just think it's a tough juggle. You have to juggle.
This line stays with me that he let go some part of himself. I mean, how many people think that way? And can theater do that? uh, to feel the soul, to realize what I am, what my potential is, and what is really soul touching. With that sensitivity, with that kind of sensitivity, when you work with teachers, what is what what do you want to what kind of experience you want to give them? Because as far as I know, you work with teachers. That is what the artful teacher workshop program is about. You work with them. So, what are the top some a few pointers that are core in the core of your program?
The teacher.
What does this
The
program do with
teacher, the
teachers?
teacher is at the core of the program.
Yeah,
I think it came about because during COVID, I got exposed to a lot of, I was always interested in education, right? But I got exposed to articulations and thinking of early childhood years, which I had never thought of. I always at Prithvi, we worked from 6 to 16-year-olds. Before 6-year-olds, no, 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 they're too little. We don't work with them. And here I was exposed to a whole world of people who had spent their life thinking and working and articulating the necessity to focus on what you do in early year education. And I found that fascinating. And that led me from one to another to another. And I read books and I went to more seminars online. And now I have this huge, beautiful library. And I realized that if one wants to touch children, which I had been doing up to now, and yet the numbers were so small, the best way to touch children is by touching teachers. And if you touch teachers, then they will be touching many more children. And
yeah,
so I thought, why don't we look at teachers? And teachers, I think, are the most neglected members of our society. I mean, I dream of an India, which I don't think will happen in my lifetime, of an India where we have our cricket stars, we have our film stars, and we have our teaching stars all on par. They are respected, they have enough money, they have respect and love and regard. But that's never going to happen. And yet we come from this great Guru Shishya Parampara, and we talk so highly about all these wonderful gurus we come from. But where do we respect our teachers? So this program came about focusing on the teacher. The teacher is central, and so it looks at the foundation of the program is the arts, not only theater, it's all arts. And it doesn't mean we teach them how to play music or to dance or to sing. That's
Yeah.
not the program. It's inspired by, so the flavors and the texture and the smells of the program are from the arts. Uh, but what we do is that we focus on the teacher, and the reason it's 3 years long, it's a 3 year long program. It's
Oh,
not a workshop. So we don't go in and out. It's called a program because it's a long time. And it's called workshop because when we do go in, it is an intense workshop we do, but we hold their hand through the year. So we go twice a year into the school for 3 days, 3 days, and we do intense 8 hour workshops every day. And then we come out and we meet them then again in the middle of that 6 month period online, but we stay in touch online with them throughout the period. We work with 40 teachers in one school, primary section. That's the design of the program. And the reason it's 3 years is because then we can really go slow and gradually get them to revisit themselves, revisit who you are, your strengths, your beauty, your awkwardness, your jaggedness, your failures, everything, and really come to terms with what that is and what it means to be a teacher, and what it means for you to be a teacher, and really think about it. And so reflection is a major part of this program, and everything that they learn in the program, it's not a toolkit. So we don't give them a little bag of goodies and chalo ye class mein le lo, you do this with your children. Not at all. It's about, first you transform yourself, you work really hard on yourself, and then you can start impacting it layer over layer into your classroom, on the children, and the children will be changed. And it's happening, we're seeing it.
lovely. So it's good to know that there are schools who are ready to take such programs, or it was hard to find or convince a
Well,
school.
no, the program firstly is a tiny program. We're working with 5 schools at the moment. Um, I was not, it was COVID, post COVID. I knew what I didn't want. I didn't want to set up an organization. I didn't want to run another organization. I've run 35 years of organizations. It was a nightmare. So I said, I'll try and do it on my own. But luckily for me, a school said they wanted me to work with double number of teachers. So I had to call in a friend from Bombay and I said, help. So I'm working. One of the people who've been foundational in developing the program is Timira Gupta, and she's been part of it from the beginning. And then slowly, slowly, more people. So we've got 6 people who are part of the program now, and 2 of them are from education purely, and the others are from the arts and have worked in education. And it's I wrote to 5 people I knew because I worked in schools for many years taking a program. So I knew that I would write to people who knew the value of the arts. I didn't have to explain that to them. And one of them said yes. So the one in Nagpur, the Centerpoint School, we're working with them from the last 3 years. They're coming to an end in April. They said yes. Now we're working with 4 DPS schools, also by one owner who has the franchise of these 4. I'm working with them for 15 years now. So they took a risk with me, and they took a risk with this program. Um, and they put their money where their mouth is. They pay for it, and they paid what they wanted. We didn't tell them what to pay, so they decided what to pay, and it was fine. But now there are 3 more schools interested, and we're not looking at this as a major commercial engagement. I hope, Shuba, that this program will be able to, in the next 3 years, be able to articulate enough of its fundamental ideas and fundamental form of functioning that it can then be shared with people. And it owns is owned by everybody. It doesn't have to be owned by me. And also, I have no idea. I have no vision for the future of this program. I just know that 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. If we finish another 3 to 4 years, 6 years, it'll have been formed enough to be shared in a bigger way.
So have you completed your first 3 years?
In April. This April,
About
we
to.
finished our first,
Oh,
yeah,
all right.
next month.
So so you will compile your experience and findings and whatever you could achieve. So that
Yeah,
will be interesting to see that, look into that. Good, because I'm quite interested in similar kind of work and have been doing something around that. Sanjana, we have got a few photographs of your work. Let's have a look at them and know what's going on there. Got some idea when you are talking all these things, but maybe photographs will help us to know more about this artful teacher workshop program. To give me a second, please. Here comes the first photograph. So I can imagine this is from artful teacher workshop only, right? And
this was just now a few months ago in Patna with DPS Patna. Beautiful teachers, and we're busy working on a particular exercise. Actually, this is an exercise of thinking routine. So we do. I'm like I keep saying I'm like a magpie. I keep borrowing things and getting inspired by things from all over the place. So the
uh-huh.
Harvard University has Project Zero that has done amazing research and come up with these thinking routines, which are used by a lot of schools. So, and they should be, they're wonderful. It's available for free on the internet. So this is
Okay.
something, an exercise we were doing with them.
Same
So
place? No.
yeah, so yes, it is. So yeah, that the decoration on the ceiling was not ours. It was there because they,
Ach-
I think Christmas or New Year or something had just got over. I think this
Uh-huh.
was in January. But the basic thing is that the years are divided into three. The first year is focused on the teacher self. So it really is goes back into memory. It goes back into who the teacher believes they are. It's not We're not counselors, we're not psychoanalysts, we're, from the arts, but we can get you to pause and reflect. And so it gets the teacher to think back into their lives. The second year is the teacher in the classroom. And so we have a school in Pune that is just finishing their second year and they're entering their third year. Um,
Mm.
so the teacher in the classroom is very much like the actor on stage. What is your presence like? What is the power dynamics in that space? What do you bring? Do you bring the outside world in, or you just block it all out? So it deals with all those kind of larger, broader topics and ideas. And the third year is the teacher and child learner, and how you can actually be a learner with, I mean, the core idea of this program is that the teacher needs to be a lifelong learner. And we want to
Yeah.
ignite that again if they're not already, just like we want our children to be lifelong learners. And so their learning process needs to be a parallel process with, or even, intermingled with the children's learning. That happens in the third year. And then there are 5 dispositions. So, I mean, the big idea of the program is it's divided into 5 areas, 5 habits we want the teachers to imbibe, and it should become part of their DNA. They should get to understand, really understand, and love and inculcate play. All artists are playful. They have to know, they have to play, they have to take risks, they have to know how to collaborate, they have to know how to invent and imagine. And so, play is a really important part of our program. Thinking, what happens when we think? Where do we think from? Uh, what are the elements that get activated inside of us when we think? And so really looking at thinking, looking at questions, looking at dialogue, conversation, that's a really important part. That's another disposition. Empathy. And how can there ever be any relationship in the world if we don't like foundational, have it foundationally embedded in empathy, and we explore what that means. And teachers, most teachers who are good have a very solid core of empathy, but then how to really be aware of it and be able to know about it. Um, and what happens with emotions and behavior and all that. And then making connections. And especially with the new NEP, not so new NEP anymore, and we're asked to look at cross curricular learning. And uh, but learning should not be set up in silos in these separate, mathematics and English and language. And we don't learn like that. Children don't learn like that. They learn with beautiful cross wires all the time. So, can we build habits in ourselves, in our brain, of making connections between the world around us and the world inside us and the world around? So, that's the fourth disposition. And the fifth one is reflect and document. So right now they're doing a conversation with each other on something they've thought about and reflected. And we build this habit of reflection and documentation from the very beginning. And it's possibly one of the strongest things that teachers go away with, is being able to stop and pause and reflect. So those are the five dispositions that teachers will learn during this 3 year
Wonderful,
period.
wonderful. So they are doing, at this moment, they are in pairs, right? Partners, they
Yeah,
are,
yeah, yeah. I mean, this is also a thinking routine. It's called think, pair, share. Just turn around and have a quick conversation of what you've just
okay,
thought
okay.
with a partner. It's a quick engagement.
You are in the same workshop. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, this was, I don't know, this was another one. Or this was in Pune when I was handing out. We give them some text, we give them some material, and they create their own little journals. They get diaries, they get their scrapbook. And so we give them some material which they can always cut up and stick and paste. So yeah.
Okay.
And this is us being,
Ha.
that's Timira. That in the red is wonderful Timira, and the teachers with
Okay.
us. And yeah, we
Hmm.
were just being silly. This was a little bit of a fun warm up in between to get
Happy
ourselves
moments.
moving.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Fun. Yeah, great.
We get them to make a pledge. We have an artful manifesto, which I actually found a manifesto of the arts on the internet, which is beautiful. And so they get that, and then they make a pledge that they will make sure to keep the arts close to their life.
Okay, may
And
I read it aloud? I think I can read it. The Artful Teacher Pledge. Solemnly
we
pledge
do, we
to
do, we do solemnly pledge.
we do solemnly pledge to value creativity and the artful approach, to cultivate artful habits both in myself and my students, to let go of the status quo, and to resolve to think and act as an artful teacher. Some of the dispositions are also reflecting here, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm. Oh, great. Some discussions going on
Yeah,
in.
that's shares, yeah, on the left with the orange ribbon on.
Okay.
She's a wonderful artist and a theater person, and she's been working in education and theater and education for a long time in Bombay. She's part of the program, one of the
Mm.
facilitators. Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. I can't remember. This we're trying to do a Socratic seminar. This again comes under the thinking disposition, where to have a dialogue is something one needs to actually learn the skill, and we're learning the skill of the Socratic seminar. Um, Dear old Socrates uh, I mean, he realized that the only way to really to think of anything is to make meaning of things collectively. We have always done this in India. We've had our addas, we've had our gup sessions.
Yeah.
Sit with your chai and your samosa, and you have an adda and talk about ideas. And it's not necessarily, it's very different from a debate. We don't want to prove we're
Yeah.
right. We want to listen to each other. We want to understand one another.
Yeah. Listening to each other is such a crucial thing.
Yeah.
Hmm. Same.
So this is just a
3R.
silly, this was the beginning of a silly exercise where they have to, there's an advertisement they have to answer. This ad is for a superhero teacher. And so they have to
Mm.
improvise making a superhero ad for a superhero teacher, so that they did some wonderful, crazy things. This is at the end of a very long, intense workshop so that they can let off their steam and do some lovely, silly performance. Then they did. They did some fun stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, I think this is
Another
story. We read some stories. This is in Ludhiana. Beautiful Ludhiana
Ludhiana.
teachers. Yeah.
But it is standalone workshop or it is a part of program.
No, no, this is all part of the program.
All
No,
right.
I don't do standalone workshops
Okay.
anymore.
All
Yeah,
right. All right. Okay.
yeah. And this is
Okay.
actually our logo is inspired from by this. And this is um an inspiration I got from this wonderful man who I will talk about, from Parker J. Palmer. And he talks about the teacher self and how we need to reconnect to our true selves, you know. And so if you look at the Mobius strip, this is a beautiful Mobius strip. And if you take
Mm.
a strip of paper and you turn it half, like you can join it like that and it becomes a circle. But if you just half twist it, and then you've got the most beautiful, beautiful thing. You've got a Mobius strip, which has only one side and one edge. And you do it yourself, and it's so beautiful. And if we can look at ourselves like this, can this be
Hmm.
who we are, not divided, an undivided self? Because here we're divided. If we're like this, we have an inside and we have an outside, and we're creating gated community or a fenced community within ourselves. But if we do this, we actually find that we are an undivided self. And we can show certain parts to the world that we want or not. Um, you can turn it around and move it around, but it's a beautiful, elegant
Hmm.
conception. The Mobius strip.
Wow.
So this didn't come from me. This has come from this wonderful man who I absolutely adore. So this is like our Bible. And this is the book I was telling you about. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Wow. So, well, we have a few more photographs. Then we can come back to this book, maybe.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. Just see what is next. Showing some picture, story, or what?
Well, this again is a thinking routine, a see, think, wonder thinking routine. It's just they look at pictures, and I wanted them to look at risk and the idea of risk and children doing pretty risky stuff in carpentry, and
Mm.
what that does. What does that make them feel as teachers? Are they willing to allow children to take risks? I think that's one of our biggest problems in our world today, is that we overprotect children and we don't allow them to
Yeah.
take risks. We don't allow them to fail. We don't allow them to make mistakes. And so then when they do fail and when they do face opposition and they do face problems, they don't know how to deal with them. And it's our fault. We've created this world. So it's in fact Judy Dench, I was telling you about another beautiful Judy Dench, that wonderful British actress. I'm reading her book, Shakespeare, the Man Who Pays the Rent. It's about her year, about all the Shakespeare plays she's ever performed in. And she talks about failure so beautifully. And she says that, you, as an actor, you have to fail all the time, and you have to be ready. And my grandfather wrote the same thing in his book. And
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, failure is I think it's a wonderful thing. I hate the word success, and it's being used so much in schools today. And I just think it should be banned from schools, though I don't think anything should be banned. But I just
Yeah.
think it's such a disastrous word to use. It just is such a terrible. I don't ever remember this word when I was little. It was something I thought happened to people when they were very old. When you were very old and at the end of your life, you became successful. But it wasn't an ambition, and now everything is about success. You have to be successful all the time. And you haven't even lived. How do you know about success?
Yeah. Uh, Success has certain connotation, I think. If you do this, you are successful. They don't talk about process you were talking about. If you get this, you are successful. But how you are living, how you are walking, going, moving,
Mhm,
उसकी कोई बात नहीं करता है. So
mhm.
we have a couple of photographs left. Let me go back to the photographs, please. We were talking about this. Yeah, again, that
That's
workshop.
Timira. Yeah, this is in the Pune DPS school. I think in our first workshop or second workshop.
Okay,
Yeah. And that's them, beautiful Pune teachers. The first workshop, I think was, yeah, that
all
was
right.
them. So silly. I love it.
Yeah, lovely. That shows how much they liked it. Ah, their experience. You give an experience, and here is a quote. This is one of your favorite quotes, I think. Experience is not the best teacher, it is the only teacher. The name is Betty Bob.
Bev Boss. So Bev Boss
Boss.
is one of the most. I mean, again, I got to know her only during COVID when from one speaker to another speaker, all these seminars I would attend and hear amazing speakers, and so many of them were inspired by her. So then I went and did some research, and she was one of the most amazing early years teacher
Oh,
thinker. And she then went on a sort of mission to spread uh, an attitude and an approach to how you must be when you are an early years teacher, and how the child must be central to everything you do, and the child's capability being enormous. And we should not be readying the child for school. The school has to ready themselves for the child, and
no.
I think that's just, oh, that is also a fantastic quote. But in her school, it was all about experience. The children learned through experience, so whatever they wanted to do, they did. Only thing she took care of was that there should be no damage, or no fatal experience that they go through, but everything is safe. But they can take risks, they can fall, they can jump, they can do whatever they want. And she was really, really amazing, and inspired a whole lot of generation of teachers and educators in America. But then the next quote is more interesting, or as interesting, because here you have John Dewey, who came many, many years before her, and he's a philosopher and a psychologist and an education reformer. And he says we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. And I think she's talking about really young children from early years, and he's talking about then when you get your reflective brain's ability to develop, then this is what happens. And we need to build this habit in ourselves, that we reflect, that we stop and pause and reflect on our experiences. And I think that's really, really critical. It doesn't really exist in this world much.
So when you said both quotes, yeah, we all keep talking about experience, and arts are attached to experiential learning also. But it's when you said it made me think a lot more. I mean, or say I got some words like you also. I take things from here and there wherever it is good. So how to incorporate those things? You are always learning. You don't have to ready child for the school have to ready itself for the children. What a wonderful thing. I mean, uh, I wish schools understood this. But
Yeah.
there are certain set of rules. You have to walk this way, talk this way, dress this way, because you are in schools. But leave what are you, what you can imagine, what is inside you, follow what we are doing, and we are doing it for your good only. And this good is being done for centuries or maybe more than 100 years. Children's way of thinking has changed. but we are still doing the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Um, After this quote, which is your favorite quote, I have something which is like a quiz for many. Can anyone think in the audience? This is the theater. People know ground plan. Other people also know there is a basic naksha, a map of any building. So this is very interesting picture, which shows us a ground plan of. Let's see next picture, and then we will talk about that. Um, Here it is. Um, so it's you only in the front, right?
Right.
And you are holding the same sheet, or you are holding something else?
No, no, I'm holding the sheet. We're actually
One part of it,
standing.
corner,
We're
right?
West. Yeah, yeah.
Many
We're
hands are
standing.
there.
Yeah, yeah. That's my mother,
Oh,
and that's Ved Sagan, the architect on the behind me.
the architect of Prithvi Theatre, and this
Yes.
is the
This,
ground
this.
plan of
We're
Prithvi
standing
Theatre.
on the stage of Prithvi. It's
On
mud.
stage, okay, on stage of Prithvi. Okay.
Yeah. It was, yeah.
Ah, nice. And this little Sanjana, what was her exposure to the art at this age, around 10 or so, I think?
Yeah, yeah. I must have been 9 or 10. I mean, actually, for me, this was the beginning of my fascination with architecture also. I
Oh,
loved pouring on my, because my mother was obsessed with building this theater. So there would be, our dining table would be turned into a workspace, and there'd be all these papers everywhere. And I loved it because it's like a puzzle. You have to figure out, okay, where's the staircase, and where do the people stand? And I just loved trying to understand and decode what this map was. And I've always loved architectural plans, and I always find architecture actually fascinating because it all has to do with how your spirit gets embodied in the four walls or five or six walls of a space. Very much like a theater, how does energy get embodied in a space, both the audience's energy and the performer's energy, and what happens in that space and how you can transform it.
so do you remember those times? You must be in some school at this age. So what was
Oh yeah.
happening in the school? What was school like for
Oh yeah.
you?
I mean, so this plot of land was a plot of land that we would come to with my school friends from far away. We lived an hour away, and we'd come on picnics sometimes because it was near the
Mhm.
beach, Juhu Beach, and it was my grandfather had a small Prithviraj Kapoor had a small cottage. He was no more. He died 5 years earlier, and he had a small cottage. But he always wanted to build a theater here in his lifetime, and he never managed.
Oh,
So
ah.
after he died, then my father decided we will build this theater, and that's how it happened. But I loved playing around with Nange Pair, as you can see, and feeling the earth below my feet. And I love that
Yeah.
area because it was full of coconut trees, and it was really cottages. It was very, very lovely. But I went to a school that was a very progressive school at its time. It was an experimental school, the Bombay International School, and 200 children. We all knew each other, very small, no divisions in our classes, just one class, 20 children in a class. And I was very fortunate because they looked at each child really, really individually. They knew you. They knew if your parents had academic aspirations for you, then they'd push you. If they knew, like mine didn't and I didn't, so they never pushed me. Um, but they allowed me to flourish artistically and be part of, drama and all sorts of things. So it was fun. It was a really fun place to be.
Okay. One more photograph.
This is
Uh,
also one of my
yeah,
favorite.
it's around the same age.
Up around the same age, maybe a little bit earlier, but it's in my favorite place in the world with my favorite person, my mom, and it's in Goa. And I think my
Mm.
parents, they in the 1970s, when I was in 1970, when I was 3 years old, they rented a place in Goa because they decided they wanted to have a second home there. This is before Goa became what it is today. It was really just the Goans and the hippies, the end of the hippies. The hippies were leaving now, but they were
Mm,
still there. And for me, that was the best gift my parents ever gave me because it was a life away from Bombay in a very different
mm,
environment. It was very
mm,
rural. Literally, we had no pumped water. We had to get water from the well. We had no irrigation. We had pigs cleaning our toilet. Um, we had very dim lights. My mother would read with a torch on her shoulder because she had to read a book every
um,
night before she went to sleep. So
mm,
and I grew up with friends from the village who are still my friends today. And when I meet them, I don't meet them for 4, 5 years. We message once a year. And when I meet them, it's as if we met yesterday, and it's beautiful. So it's a very rich gift my parents gave me in life. With 3 months of the year, we would spend in Goa.
do you remember who clicked this?
No, no, it might have been even a professional photographer, or it could have been my dad. I have no idea. I have no idea. No.
Mm, all right, that's lovely pick. And with photographs, we ended here. And quickly, let me get back to the point of the books. Like today, only you have had your Amazon moment. Books are there, and you many times refer to the books. Uh, I mean, is there any book you feel like going back again and again, or maybe many books? But can you tell us about one book that you really love and want to keep close to you,
Yeah,
or
well,
these
I
days? Yeah.
mean, sure, this one. I mean, this is the one as you can see, I keep going back to it again and again and again. And
What
in
is the
fact,
title, please?
it's called The Courage to Teach, Parker J.
Ah,
Palmer. And
the
can
courage
you
to
see it?
teach.
Can you see it the right way
Yes, yes,
around?
clearly,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, the courage.
And he is,
Exploring the inner
landscape of the
landscape
teacher's
of a
life.
teacher's life. Wow.
And I'll read you just because I mean, he's really, it's like poetry. He writes like a poet, and he's a very deep thinker, but not inaccessible. He's accessible. You can understand him, and yet you want to read him again, again, and go back and again. And it says here very beautifully. I'll read this because it's more
Yeah.
beautiful than me. It says, for 40 years, Parker J. Palmer has worked on behalf of teachers and others who choose vocations for reasons of the heart,
Hmm.
but may lose heart because of the troubled, sometimes toxic systems in which they work. Hundreds of thousands of readers have benefited from the courage to teach, which takes teachers on an inner journey toward reconnecting with themselves, their students, their colleagues, and towards reclaiming vocational passion. And he really, really, I mean, it's very practical what he writes about. It really is things that one can do for oneself, one can do in one's classroom, one can do in the world of teaching. It's it's really beautiful. It's a very special book.
Nice. Do you want to tell something more about this book?
Well, he said something fascinating, which I always used to find intriguing. He says that the teacher I'll read you a little bit. Shall I read you something?
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah,
He says that you're
sure.
talking about the inner landscape and how the teachers, they need to reconnect to their inner landscape of their teacher self. And to chart that landscape fully, three important paths must be taken: intellectual, emotional, and spiritual.
Hmm.
And when he said spiritual, I was like, what does this mean? I'm not a religious person, and I am a spiritual person, but I'm not a religious person. But I'm very skeptical of all this talk. But he says it so beautifully. And he says, none can be ignored. He says, reduce teaching to intellect, and it becomes cold abstraction. Reduce it to emotions and it becomes narcissistic, totally about yourself and in love with yourself. Reduce
Mm.
it to spiritual and it loses its anchor in the world. Intellect, emotion, and spirit depend on one another for wholeness. And it does a lot of talking about the wholeness of a teacher, of a person, and of a teacher. They are interwoven in the human self and in education at its best. And I have tried to interweave them into this book as well. And then he goes on to explain a very one last little tiny part. By intellectual, I mean the way we think about teaching and learning, the form and content of our concepts and how people know and learn, of the nature of the student and, of course, of our subject. By emotional, I mean the way we and our students feel as we teach and learn, feelings that can either enlarge or diminish the exchange between us. And I love that. And you know this in theater, when you walk onto that stage, you can either enlarge or diminish the space. And a teacher has to learn this. And by spiritual, I mean the diverse ways we answer the heart's longing to be connected with the largeness of life. I think that's really beautiful. The diverse ways we answer the heart's longing to be connected with the largeness of life, a longing that animates love and work, especially the work called teaching.
Such a thoughtful book it seems, and very touching. In fact, yes, I can feel that. But I was just thinking how what is the space in our education system for this kind of thinking, welcoming this kind of teacher, understanding it. And yes, as you were saying, like, I don't know when this time will come that they will be treated as stars, film or cricket, or like doctor or engineer or teacher. Oh, you are teacher. In a document of um, this is NCT curriculum framework for teachers. There is a line, I read that years back, that a society is known a lot through the way they respect their teachers. That kind of line, I remember that. I mean, I'm just reminded of that. So lovely reading books, and books of this type will, I'm sure, gives a lot of food for thought. I'm tempted to ask you how many books you read, and do you have some other books like must read when you are a teacher and you really um, want to grow and think and do or improve? Such books or
Yes,
any other
lots.
books you want
So
to
we
share?
we give. I mean, there's a cupboard full, but we give a list of 100 and something books to the schools we work with, and we ask them to buy them if they can for their library, because
Mm.
and when we're lucky, they do. So they have so far, and then we work it into our program, and the teachers read those books. So teachers are reading these books, and in our program. They're not necessarily reading it alone. They're not reading it from cover to cover, but they're reading it in bits and they're reading it collectively in small groups. So there's a lot of structure to the year's program, what they do and how they meet and how they engage. And reading is a very important part of it. Filling themselves with all this is very important.
Yeah. So may I ask you, like, all right, we are talking about, we have got fairly good idea of your work with teachers at present under this program. But what do you think? What arts in general mean in our life? Arts. How do you look at it? How should we look at it? How do you look at it? How should we look at it? I think you must, because you are so much into arts. What do you think?
That's a huge question. I don't know what I mean.
Yeah.
I, as I said, I think arts have to become very intimate and very accessible. And what I mean by that is that it should be just like you go down the road to get, you have to go to the stationery shop to buy a pencil for school tomorrow, or you need to go to the petrol pump to fill your car. You should be able to go down the road to sit in a beautiful little being an operative word. I think we have too many big, huge art complexes which make you feel little. But we need small, intimate spaces that are inspirational, where you can walk through and you see an art exhibition, or you hear somebody play a piece of music, or you hear some poetry. And I remember I was in New York studying there many years ago, and just walking down Central Park, and I heard the most amazing poetry, which I had read 15 years earlier in Bombay. And I couldn't believe that same black poet was standing in front of me reading with live music. And it was free and open to the public, and it was just there. And I could, it was no big deal. It was very casual, but yet not in, what's the word? It was informal, but not casual. And that's a really important thing I've learned in life, is to be informal, but not casual. You don't take it casually, as in it's not sloppy, it's serious stuff, but it's informal. It's just, and then when I went to South India, and I visited the most amazing 2 weeks of my life with a friend of mine. I visited a temple festival where B. Jayashree was singing, and she never, I couldn't believe it. She didn't introduce a single song because her audience knew every single song she was singing. In Bombay, she has to, or Delhi, she has to explain what rag she's singing and to what and this and that. But there, she just sang. And there were people sitting, there were people sleeping, there were people eating. It was in the courtyard of the temple, and it was at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was just life. They weren't being disrespectful to her. They were absolutely listening. There were children there, and they were really listening. But it wasn't like a fake listening. In Delhi, you'll get audiences, or in Bombay, you'll get audiences like, yeah, yeah, they're all doing their, whatever. But do you really get it? And so that's what I mean. It's just, it's a part of your life. And if we can generate that, um, and unfortunately, if we're fighting against a very, very demonic influence of television, which is in our homes, uh, which is diminishing our aesthetic to such a huge extent that we're losing an ability to know good from bad anymore. But yeah, that's what we need. Whether we'll get it in or not, maybe not. We're in Kali Yuga anyway. It's all going to end.
Sanjana, before I ask you next question, there are people with a couple of questions here. I will take them, but I just want to thank them for being here, and not only being, but writing. Rolling Eyes, Hina Akhtar, Jagmohan, Ravindra Maru, Krishnanand, Bijarban, Meenakshi Dhiman, and she has a question, Somali Bist, and Shobha Gautam, and I will take their questions, Mani Kohli and all. Um, you have a lot of exposure to what is happening around the world in the field of arts. I won't say arts in education, or maybe that, but I will be interested to ask you, are there any practices in relation with the schools or education system that are really inspiring for us, and we wish we could do something like this?
In You mean in India, if
Out
there
of
are.
India, anywhere, do we see some practices happening?
Well,
And
that's how I met you, Shuba, the mantle of the expert. There you are plugging. I think it's fantastic. I think what Dorothy created and left was the most amazing thing. Mantle of the expert is something which I think, should be in every child's life. They should experience a way of learning. And it should be part of teacher training. It should be done
yeah,
really, really seriously. Every teacher should be exposed to knowing how to think like her. And it's very difficult to get into Dorothy's brain and think like her because she was so instinctual in every little detail, and the surprising connections she would see and she would make from just the raw material of the idea. It was fascinating. It's fascinating to see. Yeah, but yeah, there
yeah,
are Reggio Emilia is an inspiration in Italy. I still need to learn more about how they work, and there are schools in India that do Reggio Emilia systems, have incorporated them. There is a, preschool system in China, of all places, called Anji, the Anji school, and it's a district is called Anji. This woman has just actually left the job, but she set it up some years ago, many, many years ago. And it's an amazing system. If you look it up, ANJI, where they allow children to really play. It's free play, but really take risks. And the teachers are, the facilitators are there and really taught to literally sit on their hands and not intervene. Whereas in India, it's impossible. A teacher's in the room and the child is walking up a risky sort of plank, and the teacher will go, "Arey beta," and it's like, no, let them be. Put cushions on the floor if you're worried, let them fall on the floor, but with cushions. But no, we don't allow that. So there's a very, very inspirational school in America called the Sudbury Valley School, and that's like a democratic school set up some years ago. The gentleman also who set it up passed away recently, where they take freedom to another level, but it comes with huge responsibility. So children are taught immense freedom with immense responsibility, and so you have duties. You don't just have rights. And the children actually vote. Uh, all the adults every year in or out of the school. So even the founder of the school can be voted to leave the school, which has never happened. But so there are adults and there are children, and there are no classes and there are no bells, and the children learn. And those children have gone into some of the best universities and have gone into becoming some of the best professionals in fields. But they've had this incredible, rich, and unstructured education, which is it's mind-boggling. It sort of makes one think it's not possible, but when you read about it and you see it, it's extraordinary, the amount of thought that has gone into structuring that openness. So yeah, I think I'm basically someone who's a free spirit and needs freedom, but I do believe freedom comes with responsibility. So I do not believe freedom is more important than responsibility.
no bell system, no fixed classes. It reminds me of Krishnamurti Foundation schools, some
Maybe.
kind of structure they have.
Mhm.
Let me take, if there is any question, I saw one, so let me see. There also, I have one question from, haha, people want to be to team up with you. Meenakshi says, is it possible to be associated with you? I know Meenakshi, she is into visual arts mainly, but she have has been developing curriculum and all and taking workshop, working with teachers. She has asked this.
So please, we need more people to join us. So yeah, can you give her my email ID, Suba?
All right. Okay. Um, she, well, yeah, she is part of online school of drama. That is how I know her. रविंद्र मारू, थोड़ा शिक्षकों के साथ किए जा रहे कलात्मक काम को और बताएं, जैसे कि इसकी प्रक्रिया क्या रहनी होगी, मुझे जिज्ञासा हो रही है. आई थिंक यू हैव टॉक्ड अ लॉट अबाउट इट, और यू डू वांट टू ऐड समथिंग, बट इट्स काइंड ऑफ जनरल क्वेश्चन. The artistic work being done with teachers, what is the process? What will be the process? I'm curious to know. But I think maybe this question is dropped before you shared all those things where you were talking about your process. You talked in detail, but still,
Well,
do you want
the
to?
process is hugely experiential. They
Yeah.
have to experience things, they have to reflect, they have to keep records of their own journey, and then they do actually do assignments through the months. They also meet in addas, artful addas. So there is a structure to what goes on. We respond to submissions they make. They send us their reflections. They put up their reports and things on Padlets. Thanks to technology now, this is all possible. So we can be sitting anywhere. My team doesn't sit in Delhi; it sits all over the place. So yeah, it there is a
There
structure.
are couple of comments appreciating you, your work, and all. And hello and all. I don't see any particular question here. Manically informal but not casual. She liked this phrase. Informal. Yeah, we can say this for this podcast. Although also it's informal, but not casual. All right, so we are moving towards the end of this conversation, and I have a couple of questions. If there will be any other question by before I end, we will take a question from here. But my question is like, though you have given some hint already, 3 years and then 3 years, but what you really want, like after these 3 years, one thing is very clear that you would like this work to spread, go to other schools and all. But how much hopeful you are about it,
No, no,
or
no.
you
I
are
don't
just
have.
happy?
I'm not thinking of that right now. I'm really not
Yeah,
thinking of that right now. Right now, my focus is on developing the program. So it's in its
yeah.
developmental stage. There's no ambition beyond that. There
Mhm.
is great richness here. There's great wealth here. There's great contributions from everybody in it, and I have no personal ambition to say I don't know, and I'm happy not knowing, you know. I think we're living actually in a world that is so hell bent. They're so crazy about wanting surety कि नहीं, मकसद क्या है, आपको जाना कहाँ है. अरे भाई, नहीं जाना है कहीं पे, मुझे बस ये रास्ते पे रहना है. आई लव दिस रोड, आई एम एंजॉयिंग इट. आई डोंट वांट टू बी एनीवेयर. सो I love this moment, and I actually have no answer. So very often people say, how are you going to scale up, how are you going to. I am not. We are doing this. I know that if I have three more schools, it's going to make it more robust. It's going to make the engine a little more fine tuned, and then we'll see. So then after 3 years you can ask me this question again, and then maybe I'll have another answer.
I really like that. I mean, this I and that is what process is all about. Um, uh, I was in Delhi and we named our theater group Purvabhyas. That means literally means rehearsal. And we used to tell people like, why do you talk about product? Why don't you talk about the process? Each minute we are spending together with children or teachers is important. What about that? So, yes, I totally go with you. That is how. I also look at these things. Um, you are working with teachers now? The focus is on teachers so that you can reach to many more children. That is the idea. Um, in these almost 3 years, you must have got some, what should I say, encouraging uh, I want like to use results. I mean, the
Oh
experience, the
yeah.
kind of teachers,
Oh
and they
yeah.
must be sharing with you that,
Oh no, no.
my God, why did we not have this kind of training? You have touched us. So, can you share a couple of uh, sharing
Well,
of teachers?
yeah, I mean that's the thing. We live in a world where we all want everything has to be measured. We want impact analysis and all that, but it is important. It's important. We're not being stupid and saying, yeah, we're just doing this apne maza ke liye. Nahi, I'm not doing it for my
Yeah.
own maza. We're doing it to make a difference. And yesterday, so we choose 6 teachers from the 40 teachers we're working with to focus on them a little deeper and document their process a little more in detail. We've got a lot of documentation, but we just don't know how to analyze it right now. We're hoping somebody will do it, or we will find a way of doing it. And so we interview them once a year. We just did interviews 2 years ago. My colleague Timira told me that she interviewed one of the teachers who said she was a very strict teacher, and so much so that and I know this from my son's experience in school in Delhi, that I all the talk of parents, when your child goes to a new class, and oh, I hope he doesn't go to that teacher's class. She's very strict. And so this teacher was a very strict teacher. She wanted everything to be perfect and everything to be proper, and she rarely smiled in class. And parents didn't want their children to go to her class. They would go to the principal and say, please take my child out of her class. My child can't manage. That's changed. That has totally changed. And it doesn't mean she's jumping up and down and behaving like a clown. She's her same personality, which is a little bit, she's like a serious personality. But that um, the thing that has shifted for her is that she held perfection as her highest goal. She felt that she was a perfectionist and everything had to be perfect. And that has melted. And she's realized that perfection is not really important. I will do my best. My child will do their best, and that is fine. And along the way, we will have a really interesting time. So something has changed in her so deeply, and it reflects in her class. And now children are enjoying her class. Parents want their children to go to her class. So that's a pretty solid shift to have taken place in 3 years. But there are lots. I mean, there's another teacher who's come out of her shell. She was an introvert always. She's still an introvert, but she was lacked any kind of confidence. And now she's taking on leadership roles in the school. She's talking to parents, articulating herself well. I mean, a whole world has changed for her. And we don't do it. They do it in the workshop. They learn. The learning happens and is created by the teachers. We just create opportunities for them to discover things. And that's the fun of it. That's the beauty of it. It is structured. There is an objective to everything we do.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that is there. You mentioned the 5 areas you work on. Mm,
Yeah, the dispositions.
yes, those 5 areas, starting with the play or mm,
Thinking and making connections and
thinking,
reflection and
empathy, and
documentation and
I
empathy.
was wondering you did not make creativity part of it.
I think it's everywhere. The base of the base of the program is the arts. So it's not like creativity is not separate. You have to be creative when you play, you have to be creative when you're thinking, you have to be creative when you're being empathetic and figuring things out of how to deal and behave with bad behavior. You have to be creative with when you're reflecting and documenting, and how are you going to actually engage in it's creativity is everywhere. It's in everything when you're making connections. So it's not a separate thing. Um, these dispositions would actually were they were 9, and then we honed them down to 5. they really are dispositions that we feel need going deep into. Creativity is the means of it, and is there, it's the language. And so the teachers are actually they actually all have to they all have to practice personal creative practice. So all the time, every month, they have to actually do, every week they have to set themselves something they want to learn, a new thing, maybe how to paint or how to crochet, or it can be a little bit like craft also, but we try. So we some of them do gardening and cooking, that's we allow for the first 3 months, but after that it has to be more in the realm of arts. um, but it can be it's something that you can learn, even rangoli, but or even henna painting, but something that you can make your own. So you learn it, you learn the technique, and then how can you express yourself? And they do this right through the 3 years in different at different levels. So that they have to do that, something as they do, something to keep them close to the arts, and they learn what it does to them and how it shifts their relationship with their family. I mean, things change at home. um, so they're going through creative processes continuously. It's a
All right.
blanket that
So,
goes over everything.
all right. So there is no as such a particular session around what is it being creative and what all it
We
imbibes
do
within
we do
it.
look we do look at we have a session which looks at what is it to be artistic, artful, and creative, and are these three, can you distinguish, is there a difference between them, is there not, and how can we make our distinguish, how can we make our definitions which are different? So yeah,
So
we
have
build our
you been,
vocabulary.
sorry, yeah, please continue.
No, we build our vocabulary. So we build our artful vocabulary, and they build their vocabulary. And so vocabulary is a pretty important thing. So you have words to express yourself, and you understand what it is you're expressing. So yeah,
So
the
during all these discussions or thinking which take place there, um, has artificial intelligence got some space or in what way?
Oh my God, we have to still embrace this beautiful space of this monster that we have in our lives. We haven't addressed it yet, as in we have to have a session, but there are many different ways in which we open up ideas with teachers. Some of them is in like a session in the workshop, some of it is in resources that we send them, some of it is in questions that we ask them to go and do some research on. So this is definitely something that needs to be addressed, but we haven't done it yet.
Yes. A few more comments. Mani Kohli, hello, ma'am. And Mridula Bhadrash. But it is all Thanksgiving, and it's a comment. There are comments, and I was looking for a question. All right, but it's all praise about the way you are articulating things. So good. Have like you were talking about that teacher, which was like, and parents used to say, "Udhar nahi bhejna, bachao unse." Um, now, have how have teachers started sharing the experience of children? Like, are they are they seeing some are they noticing it, and in what way
So
they must be
a lot
sharing
of
this? Like, yeah,
right
because they
right
have
from day
changed.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what kind of sharing they are coming with? Like, how children are feeling now?
So right from day one, they send us reports of documents of what they're doing in their class on certain things, and we
Mhm.
ask them to start observing their children. So it's not always easy for them to observe the detail of the children connected to what we're asking them to look at. So it takes time, but they do, and they're fascinated with suddenly they get to see how the child is thinking, not just what the information the child knows in their head, because that's you do in a test, but they're getting to understand how the child thinks, and what fascinates or interests the child, and that is shifting, and that is beginning. I mean, one teacher has said that there's no going back. I am now changed beyond anything. I can't ever go back to that old way I was teaching. I will always have this new way of teaching, which is, and she is full of her own joy and love and excitement. And she says, I'm so excited. She was always a good teacher, but it's just been able to, she now recognizes what was good in her, and she now recognizes how to make it constant and perpetual. And so it's really a subtle thing, and it's different for everybody. And she now knows how she can then connect to the children more and more. So I mean, we are hearing, our we the teachers do tell us about what they notice change in the children. We need to be able to find a way of keeping track of, say, one or two children, which we haven't managed to figure out how to do yet. Because if we can keep a track of one, but it's not easy for us. The school has to do it with us. So let's see. Yeah, we need a more
Yeah,
robust look at.
next
But
thing
the
will
but the
be.
principals are telling us. I mean, the principals. So in one school, they've changed the seating around in the classroom. After an entire exercise, we went through a Boal exercise of power dynamics, and then they changed their seating in the classroom, so the seating is more, children can see each other. And the principal is telling me now, it's amazing. The children are more attentive. They're talking with each other. They're discussing. It's not as though they're talking to distract each other. They're talking in engagement with each other about the subject at hand. And she said it's unbelievable the kind of uh, productivity that's coming out of the classes now. Another principal told me early on in Nagpur that I don't get memos anymore from the teachers in that area, because one teacher's class used to be always very noisy. She could never control the class, and now she can control the class. We don't teach her how to control a class. If anything, we want a nice, noisy class. But what it means is she's got an engaged class. The class is engaged now. They're doing things, they're interested, and the principal doesn't get memos anymore. So there are all those sort of anecdotal stories we have.
I will be looking forward when you compile the whole thing of 3 years. That will be wonderful to see it. Very small question, light question. Many good teachers say that they learn a lot from children. Have you ever learned anything from a particular child? Have you learned any particular thing and you remember that again and again from children or any child?
Oh my God, so many things. Well, for one, when I brought my little child home, this big, well, he was always quite big, and I brought him into the house, and I looked at him and I said, Boss, you've got to help me. I don't know how to do this. And I promise you, it's as if he heard me, because I put him down a little, and then the next day or something, to change his nappy. And I was changing his nappy like this, and he went, So I said, Kya hua, Baba? And Susu went. So he taught me, I otherwise the Susu would have gone straight in my face. So yeah, I mean, my son has been a great teacher to me. But I think children, yeah, they always will teach you if you let them.
Yes, Sanjana, lovely talking to you, and I get a better insight of your work. I had some idea. I had read a little also. You had shared, but now I have better idea, and I will have many more things to share further. I am thankful to all those who were here during this conversation. I am already thankful to them who will see the recording. I know not everybody can come at the same time. उनको धन्यवाद जो यहाँ थे और उनको भी धन्यवाद जो यहाँ पर बाद में होंगे। और आप जानते हैं कि हर बार हम एक नए मेहमान से आपकी मुलाकात करवाते हैं। अगर आपको भी किसी खास मेहमान से जो कला के क्षेत्र में या आर्ट्स और लाइफ की बात पर कुछ अनुभव रखते हैं, विशेष अनुभव रखते हैं, या उन्होंने आर्ट्स एजुकेशन चिल्ड्रन को लेके काम किया है, तो आप बताएं, हम उनको भी यहाँ पे लाने का प्रयास करेंगे। आप सबका धन्यवाद, बार बार धन्यवाद, आप यहाँ रहे। मैं देखता हूँ कोई सवाल तो नहीं है। आई डोंट think. Hema Satya. Okay, no question. So अभी के लिए भी धन्यवाद, और जो बाद में रिकॉर्डिंग देंगे उनके लिए भी धन्यवाद। लेकिन इससे पहले कि हम जाएं, हम हो सकता है संजना कुछ कहना चाहें, कुछ और जो छूट रहा हो। ये आर्ट्स और लाइफ की जब हमने बात की, तो चलते चलते आखिरी बात, लास्ट थिंग विल कम फ्रॉम संजना ओनली।
No, just, yeah. I think, make sure you take a child to the theater or to a museum or to a music concert. Just make that your maksad every month or every year or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, give exposure of theater and all other arts. That is the idea. Thank you again. Thank you, Sanjana. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much
Thank you.
for taking out time to be here and have this conversation. And this is the beginning of many more conversations. Thank you. आप सबका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। फिर मिल ओह, मैं एक बात तो भूल गया कहना। मुझे लोग कहते हैं तुम ये बात क्यों नहीं कहते हो, कि if you think this is a good platform, good thing, you are listening to people, you are coming to know their work, then subscribe to this channel or podcast, so that we make a community of people who wants to develop this idea of arts in life, arts in schools, right? So thank you again. Thank you very much, Sanjana. Thank you. Bye bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Shubha.